Since 1989, Tibetan Lama Tartang Tulku and his organizations have sponsored an annual gathering at the Great Bodhi Tree, the site of the Buddha's enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, India. The story of this project begins here, in this very place, yet spans continents and millennia. More than 2,500 years ago, a young prince from India left his home to search for a way that could lead to an end to suffering. He studied with many of the great teachers of the time. In the end, he found their teachings wanting. Ultimately, he came to sit at the base of a great banyan tree near the banks of the Nairanjana River in northern India. There, through enormous spiritual effort, he attained full understanding and became known as the Buddha, the Awakened One. He taught throughout the subcontinent for 45 years. His teachings spread widely, leading to a great cultural flowering that lasted more than 1,500 years. In the 7th century, the Buddhist teachings were brought to Tibet, which became the treasure house of the writings and practice lineages of many of the great Buddhist schools from all over Asia. For the next 12 centuries, these teachings inspired generations of Tibetan masters to practice meditation, write masterpieces of applied philosophy and logic, and create timeless works of sacred art. Compassion became a guiding force for an entire civilization. All this changed in the 1950s when the communist invasion led to the nearly complete destruction of all monasteries and educational institutions in Tibet. More than 100,000 Tibetans suffered great hardships to cross the Himalayas, often on foot, to escape to India, Nepal, and Bhutan. Many left their own belongings behind to bring out precious texts and sacred images that otherwise might have been lost forever. Tartang Tulku was one of these refugees. A fully trained Lama and scholar of Tibetan Buddhism, he taught in India for 10 years. In 1968, he came to the West. He began a global search to find the lost Buddhist texts of his country, the literature that had been the heart of Tibetan culture for centuries. With a team of dedicated volunteers, he began reprinting those texts in 2 vast collections. Together, they comprise more than 750 atlas-sized volumes that have been printed on acid-free paper designed to last 300 years. Sets have been donated to libraries on several continents to assure that the teachings will not be lost. This has been a monumental effort in cultural preservation. But preserving the words alone is not enough. These teachings have been passed from teacher to student in unbroken succession for more than 1,200 years. Without being put into practice under the guidance of living masters, the words may become echoes or relics, perhaps retaining their beauty, but lacking the power or realization of their original intent. The World Peace Ceremony began as a plan to sustain the faith of Tibetans by encouraging them to gather at the most sacred site in the Buddhist world. As part of this plan, texts were reprinted from the 2 great collections Tartang Tulku had compiled to be donated to those who participated. And so, the story comes full circle. The words of the Buddha, transplanted from India to Tibet and then to the United States, are returned to Tibetan refugees at the site of the Buddha's enlightenment in India. In the first year of the ceremony, about 500 Tibetan lamas and monks attended, and 500 books were given away. Now, more than 15,000 people attend each year. This year's distribution alone will include more than 500,000 books. What does 500,000 books look like? It looks like a caravan of 25 40-foot semi-trailers rumbling through the narrow byways of villages in East India to find their way to Bodh Gaya, in the poorest state on the subcontinent, there to be distributed for free to students, teachers, and pilgrims hungry for the resources to keep their traditions alive. It looks like an entire football field covered 8 feet deep in boxes. It looks like gratitude on the faces of monks, nuns, and lay people finding a way to practice the teachings that are their birthright. They come by train, bus, ox cart, or on foot to participate in this ceremony, in this sacred place, in the presence of their greatest living masters, to pray for peace and compassion in the world. Then they return home. Some will travel for weeks or even months, carrying the texts that will continue to be a source of inspiration and knowledge to their school, their family, and their village for years to come. By January, more than 2 million texts will have been given out over 17 years. This is the single largest gift of books in human history. Through these efforts, whole libraries are being replenished throughout South Asia. The project is non-sectarian. Texts are provided free to all schools and lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. And the books themselves are having an empowering effect. Where once they were objects of veneration to be placed on an altar, now they are being widely used throughout the Tibetan community in exile, encouraging literacy at all social levels. Since the inception of this project, thousands of texts have been distributed to nuns and laywomen who, for the first time in history, have access to the literary sources that will enable them to become scholars of the great Tibetan traditions in their own right. Nearly 6,000 monasteries were destroyed in Tibet. The goal of this project is to provide texts for 6,000 libraries throughout the Himalayan region, that access to these teachings may not vanish, but remain for the benefit of all beings in all places. The time is short. The last generation of fully trained Tibetan masters is passing. They need the resources now to pass their knowledge on to the next generation of students who can keep the great streams of transmission alive. And it all happens because of a wish, because of the incredible efforts of a small group of volunteers, and because of the generous donations of thousands of people like you. The opportunity is rare. You can help. Thank you.